Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my recordings. This is technically the second of this recording that I've done. I did a previous version of this specifically for Patreon in which I talked about a specific situation that I encountered. And shortly after I released that recording to Patreon, I had another situation that came up that is forcing me to re-record, this idea and to share it with a broader audience because I think it might be a more robust offering than the previous. At least that's my hope. And this is a continuation of a series of recordings that I've done here on the channel, really focused on the double-edged sword nature of emotions and how different emotions can affect us as collectors in both a positive and negative way. And if you haven't listened to those previous recordings, I definitely want to encourage you to check them out because I think that it's a series of good videos and a series of good recordings that basically examines something that affects us all, right? We all have emotions, and the realization that emotions can be both good and bad, positive and negative, is a sensible thing. And to be aware of that and to know how to properly harness those things where appropriate and how to control them in other situations, I think is really helpful. And so I'm going to continue doing that in this recording where I'm going to talk about greed. And it is undeniable that greed can be good. Like I think it was Gordon Gekko said in Wall Street, greed is good. And I do believe that. I do believe that greed, if harnessed appropriately, can be good, because greed in my mind is a incredible motivating factor that will prompt you to do things potentially that you otherwise would not do, right? And think about it this way. You know, if you didn't want to buy nice stuff, you potentially would not get up every day and go to work. And a lot of us aren't driving to work anymore, but you still have to get up and get out of bed and go to your desk and your computer, and you have to, do something, right? So greed is good because it motivates us to do things that we otherwise would not do, right? And that is work hard at a job, seek out a promotion, go to school, get a degree, get a job, keep that job, try to, advance your career in a constructive way. These are things that you do because you want to buy stuff and you want to have a good life. So in many respects, I think that greed is good. And on the other side, greed can also be detrimental to us as people, because sometimes greed that is unchecked can put us in situations where maybe we're doing things that we should not do, that are not the best for us or the best for other people, right? And I think we can all think of examples of greed getting the best of someone and someone doing something or saying something or behaving in a way that is not constructive to that individual or is detrimental to other people around that person. I think we can all readily think of examples like that. But what prompted the first recording that I did for Patreon and what is prompting this recording is that greed actually got the best of me twice. I am not immune to these emotions that affect everyone. I am not immune to these things, right? But greed got the best of me. And in the first situation, greed got the best of me when I saw some books for sale. And I thought that I was being smarter than the average bear, and I bought the books, and I bought many of the books, but I did not pay attention to specifically what the books were. I did not do all of the research that I needed to do to make the best and most informed decision as to what I was doing. Now, what I will tell you is that I did not catch a brick. Like, it was not a mistake that was made that I could not recover from. It just wasn't the landfall, the windfall that I expected it to be as a result of this action that I had taken. And if I could do it all over again, would I do it? Yes, but I would do it differently. Again, I found myself in this situation before where because my greed clouds my judgment, I don't do all of the due diligence that I normally would do to ensure that the step that I was taking was a sensible step, that the things that I thought that I was observing are and were indeed true, right? Because greed can cloud your judgment. It prevents you from seeing alternative points of view or from doing the right research, right? And again, I found myself in that situation several times. So again, it's like, do I do it better? Do I do it different? Probably, but am I still prone to mistakes? Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is just one of the examples that readily comes to mind. And the immediate question that people will ask themselves is, well, why is Regie telling us about this? And I'm telling you about this because my goal for the channel is to help you make sense of comic book collecting. And so if you can learn from the mistakes that I've made, then that frees you up to make other mistakes. No, well, it actually hopefully helps you avoid my mistakes and maybe helps you to avoid other mistakes down the road that are very similar, right? So it's like, if people can learn from the things that I do, both good and bad, to me, that's a win. And that is helping the hobby as a whole and people individually be better when it comes to this hobby of comic book collecting. And I don't get into a lot of the details specifically of like what was done, how much was spent, that kind of stuff, because in my mind, those details, at least as it relates to this situation, is not relevant so much as the thought process, the mindset, the high level mistake that was made, if you will, right? It's not about the fine details. And I don't like talking about cost. And I think a lot of people that are longtime subscribers of the channel recognize that I don't like talking about money. It makes me generally uncomfortable. And I found that there really is no good way to do it. And so to that point, I try to keep it at a high level, and I try to talk about philosophically what was done and why it was maybe not the best thing, because I think that people can fill in some of the details to help themselves make sense of the scenario a little bit better than if I were to provide every single nitty gritty detail. So again, as I alluded to in this recording, there were two mistakes that I was made. That was one of them, buying things that maybe I should not have bought in the quantities that I did because I did not do my research. That was like scenario one. Scenario two was that my greed got the best of me when I had an opportunity to sell a book. I had an opportunity to sell a comic for a fair profit, and I did not pull the trigger. And I did not pull the trigger because the buyer was a few dollars off of where I wanted to be. And I drew in my mind this line in the sand that basically said, I'm going to sell this book for X. And the seller or the buyer presented an offer that was pretty close. I mean, it was honestly pretty close. And if you know, I was thinking more clearly and more rationally, I probably should have taken the offer, but I didn't. I was being greedy. I was being greedy, and I did not pull the trigger, and I lost the sale. And there was no one to blame for that other than myself, you know. And I remember the buyer said to me, "Bro, work with me." And in my head, I was like, "Bro, I'm working with you, and you're not at where I want you to be, so I don't know what to tell you." And again, it was this thing of, had I been thinking a little more level-headed, I probably would have gone ahead and pulled the trigger, because the reality is that where he was, where I was, wasn't that big of a delta between the two. The challenge was that by not taking the deal, I ended up with zero. I ended up with zero that day. And will I be able to sell this book at some point? Yes, I will. But I should have been less greedy for a few extra dollars. For a few extra dollars, had I been less greedy, the buyer would have walked away with, I think, a really awesome book, and I would have turned a nice profit. But I was being greedy, and I had clouded judgment. And the question that lingers in my mind is, there are many. It's like, will that opportunity come along again? And will I recognize it in the moment that I am potentially making a not smart decision because I am holding out for a few extra dollars that honestly would not make or break me at all? And again, I have no doubt that the book will sell, but the question is when? When will the book sell? What will that price be? Will it be higher? Will it be lower? I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. And it's one of those things that in this market, which is so dynamic, that almost anything could happen from week to week, from month to month. And it's like that book could potentially go up in value or it could drop. I honestly don't know. And it's a thing of, now that I have not made the deal, now I have to wait and see what happens next. And again, I offered these things up not so that people feel bad for me, because that's not the goal, right? I mean, it is not about, hey, feel bad for Regie for losing a sale. It's more about, what lessons can you learn from the things that I've done that might be applicable to you? Realistically, if you were selling a book, or buying a book for that matter, is $10, $20. And that's not what the number was. But it would $10 or $20 really make that big of a difference? I don't know. These are questions that you would have to ask yourself. Are you holding out for some unrealistic expectation? Are you trying to do the best possible deal that you can make so as to move on to some other things, And at the end of the day, none of us know the answers. None of us really know, at the moment today, how we're going to handle these situations in the future. But the thing is, when these situations present themselves, will we recognize them for the opportunity, or will we allow greed to cloud our judgment and to prevent us from potentially making some smart decisions? And here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing, right? I could have not done that deal, and next month that book triple in value. I mean, I doubt that will happen, but that's one of those things that could happen. You don't know what could happen. And so it's like, you try to make a sensible decision in the moment, hoping for the best. And again, this is why I offer up my 2 examples for you all to consider and to think about, and hopefully to apply to your respective lives. As always, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this recording. And I'm honestly curious, if you have made some mistakes like this where greed has gotten the best of you, and has it worked out? Has it worked out for you? I am honestly curious as to people's experiences with being able to control the greedy monster that exists within us as people, and also as comic book collectors. So I'm definitely going to be looking forward to reading your comments in the comment section. As always, if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.